walk me through a little bit more about your role with the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the vice president of marketing technology. So I cover everything that is e-commerce and online for the company. We have a D2C site, a B2B site. I also handle Amazon. In addition, I also handle the digital ad buy, digital marketing for both B2B and D2C and Amazon. And then also I handle the CRM and any kind of B2B marketing emails and SMS.
Everything. Yeah.
It's a good amount. It's a good amount of things, but I have a pretty incredible team that supports me. So
Yeah. And, before we even go into like the current team you have or, training them, it starts somewhere, right? And it starts with determining when you need to find somebody new or when you need to hire a person or an agency. What does that process look for you? And I realize per role, it could be a little bit different, but is there kind of like a mindset or a ideology you have behind determining when it's time to hire?
yeah, absolutely. So part of it comes down to understanding what gaps you have. When you look at the organization, you see where you need to grow, but you see that there's currently no resources for it. And then also looking even outside your own department on where some of those gaps may be. So, a lot of it you may say, oh, okay, we could use a UX UI designer or a developer. But when you start digging in a little bit more into the details of what you actually need, you kind of start building out kind of a unicorn profile.
Yeah.
Where with that profile, you're working with your HR person that's going to be helping you do recruiting and just kind of finding out what's out there in terms of the market. But then also in looking at some job descriptions from other companies, it's always a good thing to at least start off as and kind of understand what other things you may not be thinking of, for this role. What are some of the softwares that you may be needing to also think about that you currently don't have in your systems? So a lot of it really just comes down to understanding those gaps and finding out where to kind of direct everything towards for hiring.
Yeah. And chasing unicorns is a real thing. Do you, I know you just mentioned that, but do you find often that it can be easy to slip into the unicorn hunt? And how do you kind of avoid doing that?
I don't mind searching for unicorns. I've been lucky that my team is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I've very lucked out. I work really closely with my HR person. And I open up my schedule completely. I'll move things around if she's able to schedule some initial interviews for people that she finds that I see that, okay, if I don't pick up this person or start talking to them now, I'll lose them. Someone else is going to find this incredible person. So, a lot of it really comes down to, the unicorns will come to you if you open up your schedule. If you're gone, if you can't make room for 2 or 3 weeks down the road, that person's gone.
And does hiring unicorn always indicate paying over market average?
I've tried to keep within market average as much as possible. And being in Seattle, it is a little higher than other areas. But for me, I think for our company, since we are mission based, a lot of it also comes down to is the person right? And a lot of the time that they'll as much as we'd love to be able to pay more than market value, we're kind of tight on resources, but people will also understand the opportunity that the job has. One thing that I try to communicate in the interview process from the beginning is that my job is to empower them and kind of get out of their way and provide resources as necessary. And then from there, they kind of develop their own job at some point, because we just did job descriptions over the last couple of weeks to kind of for the whole company to refresh. And the job descriptions I wrote a year and a half ago is kind of funny. You look at it now, you look at it now, and the team is how much they've grown over the last year and a half is remarkable.
Yeah, and I think that's always interesting to. And I'm curious if you openly communicate this with the team of people grow into what they're naturally interested in or good at. right? Like people will grow into certain responsibilities or roles just because that's just where they fit. Do you leave that? It sounds like you leave that room open for people to do that.
I do, but I also challenge them because
Okay.
because there's if you allow people to only go where they're feeling comfortable, they're not going to grow. They're not going to learn.
Fair.
So for me, I like to challenge them, have them take on some additional responsibility to see if it allows them to push them into areas where maybe they're not, maybe they want to have some more experience with public speaking. Then again, pushing them into areas where they're having to report to executive leadership more often. Taking responsible for some type of reporting. So again, there's if you allow people to get too comfortable where they're at, then they get complacent and they don't feel challenged.
Very true. And I know you said, early on, you open up your calendar, right? You're available for great prospects to be interviewing that way. Do you have a specific interview process that you follow or specific things that you look for in the interview process?
For me, one thing I look at is someone that is hungry. Not just they really want a job, but hungry in terms of learning. Because one thing I always want to communicate when I do interviews is that it's also a mentorship opportunity. Where if I'm not the proper person to train them on something, then I will invest and find ways to do additional training and make sure that they have the ability to grow. That they're not just coming into a role that is that's kind of already understood and complacent, and this is what the job is and nothing else. For instance, when I had hired a incredible project manager, my first communication to her was take everything that I've done, blow it up, don't use it, and rebuild it. Talk to everyone in the team, rebuild it as you see fit. And then since then, she's done just incredible. I mean, she's remarkable.
Well, and that's reassuring to hear. And it's interesting to hear you say that, of letting people know that the role they're coming into is something they may have to help build out. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is for everyone? Can anyone help build out a role?
It's not initially. It's not for everyone. I do see that. Yeah, there's some people that you may want to, come into the role. You have specific needs, maybe Q4, and you just really need to, dive in, get the person up to speed as quick as possible. But when things slow down, then maybe Q1, Q2, that's where there's growth opportunity. That's where it slows down a little bit. So then you can kind of take that extra time, including on my own schedule, to work with them to understand where they want to grow, what they want to do, if there's other opportunities that have opened up in the company that they may be interested in. Mm-hmm.
But in theory, if someone has the experience needed to succeed at the role, they could definitely help build the role out as well. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I look at that's kind of an incentive of that I offer when someone comes onto my team, is just really allowing them the opportunity to build something out that they feel like they own and can grow with, and feel like they're part of, like they're integral part of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when it comes to onboarding, then if sometimes or most times, I'm not sure the frequency, it's a role that people are helping build out, which once again, as a startup agency, that's reassuring to hear on the brand side as well. But what kind of mindset do you have behind onboarding? Because in the agency world, we get cold DM'd on LinkedIn and hit with ads all the time, not from other agencies necessarily, but from operations agencies that want to help standardized process for onboarding and have things mapped out day by day and this and that. So I'm curious to hear like what your mindset is behind ideal onboarding for a new team member.
You have to take the time. If you're hiring someone and you're onboarding them, you need to make sure you take time to think through it before they even start the job. And ideally, you're asking the person to give 2 weeks at their upcoming job. We need to get computers. So ideally you should have 2 weeks to work with HR, understand timings of like just the first initial meetings, but then also If you have a project management tool, that's what I typically would use. I mean, we use Asana for our project management. So when I have someone come on board, I'll build out everything, and then I'll spend a few hours understanding what type of training they may need. For instance, with a HubSpot administrator that I just brought on board. I did the trainings myself on top of actually, so I made sure I understood the CRM as well as the marketing capabilities of HubSpot. But then also within that, I was able to, by doing the trainings, I was also able to understand, okay, this will take you about 3 hours. This one will take you about 7 hours. And then mapping it out for the first 2 months of the person's job. So you're not overloading them, but at the same time, you're offering education. You're setting up one-on-one meetings with yourself weekly, as well as with other people in the organization, so they get a better understanding of who's who. Plus, they get exposure. I mean, we're mostly remote in our company, so those one-on-ones with leadership as well as other team members is key. And then the other big thing about onboarding is really making sure that they feel there's an opportunity to feel part of the culture. So if you are not as remote and you're in the same city, trying to get the whole team together, do a whiteboard session to kind of get that person to feel comfortable talking with everyone else in person. And then, again, trying to, if you're having a quarterly get together with everyone on the team, trying to line up that along with the person's first month of starting.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, generally, and I'm sure it varies role to role, but how long do you expect for someone to go through onboarding to be able to get to 90, 95, 100% in the role qualified?
90, 95, or 100%, that could take 5 to 6 months even.
Yeah.
I'd say within the first 3 months, if you set them up for success with trainings and get to know everyone, you can get about 70% there. But then that last 25, 30% is really really on the person to kind of take ownership. And ask for questions, ask help, ask for questions, ask for additional training, and then also understanding where they may see additional gaps that I may have been blindsided to that hopefully they're bringing to light that then we can also tackle and then tackle together as a team.
Does 70% to you mean off of your plate or whoever's plate had it before completely?
No. I mean 70% being able to do the job. So, and many of the roles that I've had was they've had open. There was no one person in that role, so they're not replacing anyone.
Gotcha. It's a new venture.
New venture.
Yeah, gotcha.
My team has been mostly new venture where we understood where there's a gap and a need, and then hire for it, and it kind of built out. My team's fairly new. Most of them have been started about a year and a half ago. So,
okay,
fairly new and open opportunity.
And do you build out performance scorecards or any proactive ways to monitor performance as you're going through it?
So that's one thing that the company is trying to kind of build right now. We're doing that every 6 months, as well as annual reviews. And now we're working on KPIs, building those out for the company. But in terms of how I've managed and brought on my team, a lot of it comes down to setting up those one-on-ones on a weekly basis to make sure that the person has questions, but then working with that person after the first quarter and second quarter of the role, fine-tuning those KPIs, because what I may have listed down as KPIs and want to report on may be completely off, and I have to be open to that.
Yeah. And so with KPIs, what you're saying is, it can definitely be more streamlined, easier to communicate, performance, those things. What if it's something that doesn't have KPIs? Let's say you're working with a website designer and you're questioning, design techniques or something like that, right? Design styles. How would you go about approaching that in a conversation if there's no clear KPIs to match to it?
For me, I would look at going back to the brief and understanding that and make sure that, ideally, when the project was started, there was a brief that we had all come together on and understood the path. And then you want to go back and check in, and when you're doing check-ins and see where how the progress is going, always go back to the brief. That's one thing I learned in Nestle. It's like if something's going off, probably first check the brief and make sure that you're actually asking for those things. If not, if you weren't asking for them and you're asking for it now, then you need to be more flexible and figure out another way. Because if you're strict with how the brief is and follow that, and then communicate that, whether it be to an agency or to an employee, then you have the kind of roadmap.
No, I love that. Yeah, the brief is the starting point for all of the creation that way. So it's either the comprehension of or the understanding of the brief, or just the creation of it. One of the two that way.
Yeah, especially the creation of briefs. If I mean, I one thing I've always learned early on in my career is I take the time, do the research. I don't just try to get a brief out so then you can get the creative working on it and then you can move on with your work. If you do it rushed, you're not going to get the best work. But if you look at it as you're providing direction and content to an agency or to an employee, and you really care about, and you want to show that you care about the project, take the extra time to make sure the brief is good.
Yeah, and I'll rant on that a little bit. There can be two sides to a brief, which is interesting because creative is the main thing we do. So, there can be one side of the ditch or one side of the road, which is 100% creative freedom. Just make some creative about this product, or and in theory, that's them putting all the strategy and the messaging and the concept to the designer and not someone that's in charge of like the marketing strategy, right? And then there's the other side of the ditch, which could be like, use this font, this color, this specific graphic, change this part, change, like more of an iteration versus like a net new, if you will. So it's an interesting balance of like letting team have their liberties and creative liberties as well, while also having alignment on, there is strategy and messaging that goes into this where there does need to be directness and specific things followed as well.
And brand guidelines, having pretty clear brand guidelines also will help with the conversation, where if the person's going off the reservation and going into areas that are not approved by for brand guidelines that is going to cause issues, you have to course correct quickly.
Yeah, brand guidelines. Not having brand guidelines can create a lot of revisions, a lot of back and forth, and also just a lot of personal feeling versus brand alignment. You know what I mean? Like personal feeling could change day to day versus brand guide is brand guide. Yeah. It's there. It's in stone until it gets changed. But
look at evolved versus changed.
Yeah.
Our brands. Yeah, audiences may change, the targets may change. So brands are allowed to change, but again, it has to be a structure for it. Yeah,
no, that definitely. Pepsi's done it, I think 9 times now. When
I was at Miller Brewing, we had done sorry if this is off topic, but when I was at Miller Brewing, we had I was in Guam in charge. I was a brand manager for Guam and Micronesia and the islands out there. And Miller was doing the brand new logo. And then with the tagline and everything. And we got all the store signs on the islands changed with this new logo and tagline. Trucks decorated, did a huge campaign for both on-premise and off-premise. So the bars, the little mom and pop shops. And then 3 to 4 months later, Miller had changed their tagline. So everything I had built out on the island, the tagline was out of date.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So it was, but again, I knew it. Not everyone, 99% of the people didn't know it, but
yeah. That sounds like that would be a stressful Monday morning coming into the office.
Yeah. It's like, that one didn't test as well. So now we're going to change it to this. And like, that's a lot.
Let me call the sign people again. Well, I know you said mentorship is a very big thing to you. Do you have a divide or a difference between between training and mentorship?
I look at training is if there's a specific tool or a program or a software or an outlook, then that's where you can train them on it. Mentorship is more about looking at the person holistically for the career, not just in the role they're in now, but in the career that could be growing within that company or outside that company. So we're a lot of the people that I've worked with when I always tell them kind of do a gut check after 3 years. So check your gut. If you don't see where you're able to grow and move in that company, then you may want to look at moving out.
No, that definitely makes sense. And do you see mentorship opportunity with every single person you hire, or is that just kind of too much? Like, do you have to kind of give people mentorship to other people, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if there's an area where I am, where I may not have the skills that's going to help them take them to the next level, and if there's someone else within the company or a person I have as a resource or someone I know outside of the company that I've worked with in the past, then that's where my job as a mentor is then to bring in other people to help them grow and help them understand. Like my CRM admin, new to the role, so I had reached out to my previous CRM in my last company, help him understand kind of the basics of the company, of the role, what kind of challenges may be coming up that he may not see. And then also have a voice of someone to talk to later on, outside of me that he can, that he can go to and say, okay, here's someone that's done it. That's a CRM admin. That's an expert in it that he can use as a resource that's, knows way more than I do on it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way that consultants can come in, no matter if it's operations, if it's cold email outreach, if it's sales, whatever it is, like a specific channel. I think that's where consultants can really come in and help take things off your plate or whoever is leading's plate, so they don't feel the burden to have to know or learn everything specifically, but also have the confidence that there's going to be as minimal learning curve as possible as they go into a new thing.
Yeah, and with agencies and consultants, you're able to get someone that's not burdened with kind of like looking in with horse blinders, and at the company, at the business, it's able to kind of bring in something and an outlook that is fresh, and also you're able to really pry out of information from other people that may not even understand is actually important.
100%. And I want to change gears for a second and kind of open conversation on the idea of allowing mess ups, or more kind of specifically, the thought of giving people the ability to test and try new things, and having the comfortability to lead the team is doing that. I had a guest on here many episodes back, Sarah Levenger, and we were talking about creative strategy and how that's a new role for agencies, right? Because agencies remember now how important it is to have that. It's a new role, so a lot of agencies are figuring out what it is, but also, we're defining who fills that role. Is it a copywriter that knows creative? Is it a creative that this and that? And to learn creative strategy and to get good at it, you have to mess up, right? But there can be a balance as an agency because clients need good results, right? So, teetering between that as an in-house, right? How do you feel about that? And, if you do that, what do you go about doing to set up a safe place to encourage growth and mess ups and learnings that way?
I think part of it is, as long as you build a team that looks out for each other. If like the team I have right now, they're pretty incredible. They'll see if someone needs help and they're falling behind, everyone will jump in and volunteer. In terms of building a culture that allows failure, as long as you're learning from it and you don't, and a lot of the time is you're working even with an agency or partner, that as long as you're a good partner to them or a good, boss, the person should feel comfortable with failing and learning from it and then adapting and changing. If these ads didn't work out. And you know what? They ended up costing a lot more. They didn't generate leads. Well, we did it for 2 months. We got the data we need to show what wasn't working, and move on to and let's pivot and figure out, well, let's think about what will work. Same thing with, a person may have, set up a discount code on the website, incorrectly. And some people found it and were able to take advantage of it, and you lose a little money from it. That actually happened to me yesterday. Mm-hmm. So it's, I beat myself up work. So I was the one that created the discount code, but the rest of the team's like, Greg, don't worry about it. You've covered us and taken care of us so many times when they've done something like that. So it's like, yeah, don't beat yourself up for it. Just as long as you learn, correct, and work with the team.
Yeah, and I think communication comes into a big part of that as well, of just communicating the learnings and just proactively looking for opportunity in it versus just as an agency talking, if a client sees the agency messes up, I always feel it looks better if the agency brings it versus if the client has to find it. You know what I mean? Just because it shows ownership, it shows proactivity, it shows, thought behind what's going on. It's not just a mess up, right?
And then having a solution that's like, this is what happened, and here's how we're going to correct it, and here's what we've learned from it, and what we're going to move forward with.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And, I hear a term all the time, hire slow, fire fast. What's your thoughts on that term?
I'm not one for firing fast. I look at it as, the performance reviews, like where if you're having to fire someone, you have to look at it and, I guess in terms of timing. Is it because the person didn't perform? Is it because and is it because you didn't give them the resources? They weren't set up for success. If they weren't set up for success, then can you correct it? And if someone's not performing, and you put a PIF, where it's like a performance evaluation form or performance improvement form, and you give the person, okay, you have 2 months to improve. We're going to have weekly meetings, and then if that's where I look at it as like the person will either sink or swim. If they understand, they're like, hey, there's opportunity to grow and learn, and they take it on themselves to just really, bust their butts to do good, then there's never even a reason to fire. However, sometimes you'll see people will just fail. They'll actually dig a deeper hole for themselves, unfortunately. And that's where you kind of see a strength of character and just the strength of a person if okay, you kind of look back and like, yeah, I mean, we should have let them go for, 2 months ago, but we gave them a chance.
Yeah. Give them the chance to prove it. Do you generally like to do like verbal or written documentations before you put somebody on a PIF?
I do both verbal and written.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's just, it's cleaner. It's especially if it's written, and, say if you're having your one-on-one meetings with the person, it's written, then, there's no questions. There's no feelings brought into it. There's no questions. There's just facts and data and bullet points that you can agree upon, and figure out what the path to improvement is.
I love it. Well, we've talked about a good bit today here. Sorry if I was grilling you there. I think, always open to learning about hiring. That's always an opportunity as an agency. If you had to summarize everything that we've discussed today into a mindset, what mindset should marketers or business owners have?
I think to be, everyone talks about being an empathetic leader, but I think an empathetic leader also looks at their employees, and when they're hiring and mentoring and training, they need to look at beyond just their day-to-day jobs and what company they're in. If you can look at it as what's the future growth even outside of the company, what's like 10 years down the road, you're setting this person up for success, hopefully even 10 years down the road. They're not going to be at the same company they're at now. They're not going to be with you. They're going to be someone else. They're going to have other managers working with them and managing and mentoring them. So how can you, just set everyone up for success for their careers and not just for the job they're doing?
And for anyone listening that's at the stage of figuring out what marketing role or roles that they might be interested in, which ones do you think will have the highest demand opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think people that can adapt. I think growth marketing is one that's kind of a mixture of a sales and marketing, a lot of data focus. So I think any kind of growth marketing roles and getting in there now to understand how you can use B2B as well as D2C tactics to kind of grow that out and build strategies. That would be strong. Everyone talks about AI. A lot of it is, I think, just inherently. So everyone should be learning and challenge themselves and learning AI and master it, because if you don't master it now, it's going to master you. So it's if you're able to figure out how to write great prompts and use the tools and spend a little extra money to get the pro version of the tools and to teach yourself, even if your company may not pay for it, but if you stay on top of that stuff, then you'll provide value, if not for your current company, you'll provide value for your future company.
Some C-suite that doesn't know how to do it and will pay you to do it. Definitely will happen. Yeah.
Well, and also just even with those, with those tools, they're changing and adapting and evolving all the time. So, I spent a weekend just training myself on Midjourney and having fun with that. How I'm going to use it professionally in my career right now, not really sure, but I do see it's just a thought process, just kind of looking at it and kind of understanding how things are working and organized, and that will only help you with future types of softwares, tools, and will help you adapt and learn quicker.
I agree. And for the last question for you, tell us, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about you or your business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's learn about Mir at MIIR.com. So we have incredible amount of drinkware and kitchenware products, but we're also look at things in a very responsible way in terms of how you can leverage how you can oh my gosh, I can't speak today. With Mir at Mir.com, it's they'll be able to see what we're doing as a company internally as well as externally with our products, but also we have an impact report that kind of explains how we do things internally for our employees, but also how we're working with partners and creating beautiful products.
I love it. Well, Greg, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. This was a great episode.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you again, Colby.